Welcome back. Welcome back to Closing Day. My name is Jeff DelGrande, your host, and I'm here today with Brandon Shaw, and we're talking about rent-to-owns. Brandon, one of the things we talked about just before the break was that someone can use their own real estate agent to buy a home. How are things like purchase price set, things like that?
It's important to, very good question, it's very important for people to understand that renting to own doesn't mean you're going to buy the house at the price it's listed at today, because it is going to take you some time to become, as I said, mortgage ready, right? So if that term is 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, what we have to do, and this is part of what I was talking about, protecting the investor's interests as well, the way the investor would make his return is to appreciate that property over the length of the term. So let's say you qualify for a purchase price based on your income, purchase price of $400,000 today.
Right.
Your rent-to-own term is 3 years. Basically, what we need to do is take that $400,000 mark and scale it back 3 years on the market appreciation. I know that sounds pretty convoluted, but what I mean by that is if you qualify for $400,000, we have to assume that that's going to be $400,000 at the end.
Okay.
So in order to build that appreciation in, we work back from that, and that means you may qualify for a house that's $360,000, $370,000 today. Okay, and the way we calculate that appreciation is based only on fair market. So and there's all sorts of ways to calculate that through sites like CMHC, regulated bodies like CMHC, and you look at 10-year trends, 5-year forecasts, and that sort of thing. And I think it's important to note that with our program, we calculate that appreciation very conservatively. So in Dufferin County, for instance, the appreciation, just like most of anywhere near Toronto or Central Ontario, has been appreciating pretty high. Sometimes 8-10% in some places. Our appreciation is nowhere near that. For a couple of reasons. One, we're not greedy. We don't want to gouge people unnecessarily. Two, the buyout price for you as the rent-to-own client needs to be realistic and reasonable at the end of the term. Because let's say the market doesn't appreciate at 10% over the next 3 years. That's very risky sustainability. If then we can't charge you $500,000 for a house that's only worth $450,000 because it's going to be difficult for you to get a lender to give you a mortgage on that, because now the lender's looking at it and saying, well, why am I giving you so much mortgage for a house that's not even worth that? So there's a couple of reasons why we are conservative in the buyout price for you, but the other important thing to remember is that we set that buyout price for you from day one. So before you enter the program, before you sign any documents, before you agree to even start looking at house, we make sure that you're aware this is your maximum purchase price at the end, this is your maximum purchase price today, and we set that price in writing, and that's what we're held to. So let's say you're qualified for $400,000 and that house is worth $475,000 at the end of the term. Well, guess what? You get to buy it for $400,000 and you've instantly have $75,000 of equity.
Yeah, and that's perfect. That's everybody wins then.
Exactly.
Right. The investor's going to win through their investment. The person who bought the rent-to-own is going to win because they get into a home right off the get-go with equity.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's better than you can do just through normal real estate. Everybody should do rent-to-own. Right?
That's right. Yeah, if only.
If only. Yeah, so what about setting rent prices? How do you figure that?
Well, what you have to remember is sometimes in a rent-to-own, the rent is going to be a bit higher than what you would traditionally pay. And the reason for that is you've got an investor coming in, buying that house right off the market.
Okay.
So the rent that you would pay as a rent-to-own client, to be fair, has to cover the investor's mortgage payments, obviously the principal and interest. It's got to cover his property tax payments, and it's got to cover his home insurance payments. So the rent is going to be all-encompassing of those, which oftentimes can be higher than a house that's been a rental house for the number of years, because that landlord or that owner's mortgage payments are likely a lot lower than somebody new coming in off the market and putting their down payment and securing their own financing.
True, but I mean, if someone buys their own house, they're going to have those expenses anyway.
Exactly.
So it's not really a premium, it's just reality.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and remember that the investor is going to be putting more down payment than you would as likely as someone coming in to buy their first house or buy a primary residence. with only 5 or 10% down. So your monthly payments will cover, your rent will cover that.
Yeah.
So as I said, the investor will cover the property tax and the home insurance, and then you would also cover your own utilities, just like in a typical rental scenario, and you'd be responsible for getting your own tenant's insurance or contents insurance in pretty much any rent-to-own scenario.
Okay. Now, what happens if, like, life happens, right? Someone gets to a point partway through the rent-to-own program and they lose a job or something, and they can't make a rent payment. What happens in that scenario?
Well, it's a good question, and it's, you know, we understand that life does happen, and to which I always tell people, well, listen, if you own a house and you're paying a mortgage and you lose a job or get a divorce or, you know, something worse than that happens, the mortgage company doesn't have a lot of sympathy for you. If you stop making mortgage payments, it's a matter of time before somebody knocks on your door and asks you what's for dinner. Usually
not much time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you're a traditional tenant, not in a rent-to-own program, if you stop making rent payments, it's, again, an inevitability that your landlord's going to come knocking and say, where's the rent, or, you know,
time to move on.
Time to move on.
Yeah.
In a rent-to-own scenario, as I said, we are invested in your success. We are definitely more flexible than either of those scenarios, because we want you to succeed as much as you do. So we will look at every situation independently. There's no blanket response to that question. We have to see what are the circumstances, what are the factors, are you able to get yourself out and back on track? And if yes, great, we'll try and work that into the program somehow. Maybe we extend your buyout, you know, instead of 3 years, you do it 3.5 years or 4 years. And if your situation is so dire that you're unable to continue, then we will find a way to get you out of it without losing the shirt on your back. So there is a human element to our program, whereas there isn't always when you're dealing just directly with a mortgage or with a landlord.
Yeah, well, to deal with a standard mortgage, it's really cut and dry, unfortunately. Power sales happen quickly.
Right.
If you deal with CMHC, they actually have a department that will help you out if you have problems.
Great.
Because they see it the way you see it. They see it as a partnership. And they find that they become more profitable by helping their partner than they do by just pulling the rug out from under them.
Of course, as they should.
Yeah. So it's nice to see that you've got that. You know, you start off with, you know, the expectations in the right place, and then you're into this partnership with these people. Well, you get to the end of the 3 years. Let's say it's a 3-year term. They're going to buy the house back out. Is it a tough process? What is it at the end? What has to happen?
It's all built into the program before you even really get underway. It's all explained to you. The contracts are all in place. Now, when you get to the end, it's important to work with an experienced mortgage professional. Because, you know, like yourself,
Thanks.
you know, because there are, you know, it's not like you just walk into the bank and say, all right, I've completed a rent-to-own program, give me my mortgage, please.
Right.
You know, there are a handful of lenders that will finance a rent-to-own sort of home ownership situation. But that rent-to-own has to be done in a specific way from start to finish in order for them to be able to meet their lending criteria. So we will set you up to make sure that you can acquire that mortgage, but you will need to see a registered mortgage broker in order to make that happen. So, but we are certainly there to walk you through the process. We don't leave anybody hanging.
All right, so the expectations are set ahead of time. Everything is laid out. If the person needs help with credit, counseling, anything like that, you're there to...
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, one of our primary goals with you is not just to stick you in the house and say, see you in 3 years. We understand the reason you're renting to own is because there's something holding you back. You're not yet mortgage ready.
Right.
So, in most cases, people, they don't know how to fix their credit or how to get mortgage ready because that's why they're in this position in the first place. So we help them to put together a roadmap for whether it's credit repair or debt solutions, that sort of thing, so that by the end of the term they are ready in the eyes of the mortgage lender, which is most important, to get that mortgage and own the house.
Really, that's great. So something I just want to pop back to for 1 minute. You said that they can go buy a house through their own realtor. So the real estate agents, all you real estate agents out there, a rent-to-own client is a real client. they still get paid for doing their job, right? Real estate agent still gets paid for doing their job.
Absolutely. The only difference for the realtor is that they're making an offer on behalf of the investor now instead of that original client.
Wow, and I'm guessing your investors are pre-approved.
Yes, yes, for the most part.
Well,
yes,
just
they
in
are.
this market especially, it's so
you have
important.
to be. You have to be.
Yeah.
But one thing I would caution, if there are realtors out there watching, is it's difficult to get a rent-to-own pushed through when there's already been an accepted offer, and then you learn you can't get financing.
Oh, right.
The whole rent-to-own screening process itself can take a few weeks.
So that should happen
a few weeks
before.
moving quickly, yes. So this,
Okay.
generally we like to have the client screened and qualified before we even start looking at houses. There have been several times where we get a call from the realtor saying, I've got an accepted offer, we finally got a house we've been shopping for months, but my client can't get financing, let's do a rent-to-own. And it's just, the turnaround time is just not realistic. And a good rent-to-own investor is not just going to jump in without doing their due diligence. So
And
just
that
a
makes
word
sense.
of caution that to keep the expectations in check in that sense.
Yeah, and so rent-to-own companies, some of them have had issues through the years, and I imagine through those issues they have learned, and I guess this is where you come from, all those lessons through the years as well. And so this is why you're setting things up more for success. I think it's great that you plan everything ahead of time too. So there's nothing hidden, and you're using the normal real estate channels. Yeah, I can't see any downside to this. I think it's it's a brilliant idea.
I think what's important to remember is that the rent-to-own industry it's unregulated, it's unlicensed. You need to make sure that you're working with somebody that you A, that you trust, and B, who obviously knows the ins and outs of rent-to-own. As I said at the outset, there's a lot of moving parts to making a successful rent-to-own. The unfortunate thing about rent-to-own is that it's very easy to get into one with somebody who doesn't really understand the process. But
So
getting out is the key.
So they really need to get into the business with somebody who knows the business.
That's right.
Like yourself.
That's right.
Right. That's just amazing. That's great. Now, we're not going to be able to get in on this other topic I wanted to talk to you about today, so hopefully we can get you back. But we were going to talk about how somebody with too much debt could buy a home, right? So there is a solution for that as well. So we will get back to that. Unfortunately, we won't be able to touch on it today. But Brandon, thank you very much for coming out to the show. I know you had to do a bit of a trip to get here with all that bad weather, but Brandon Shaw's here. He covers the whole area, and I'm sure you've seen his name popping up and down throughout the show. And we'll hope to have you back soon.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Bye now, friend.